So let's talk about the most noteworthy conspiracy theory, the JFK assassination. This is arguably the most famous conspiracy theory of all time, that JFK was not assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald as the official story goes, but that he was actually killed by another hostile actor, or actors, and Oswald was framed. The theory, while unconfirmed, is immensely popular among average people. You don't even have to be a tinfoil hat type to think something is fishy, which is why we started with this one. It's been around for so long that it's no longer controversial. It was also brought back into the popular consciousness by Oliver Stone's 1991 film JFK, starring Kevin Costner.
So here's the official story. On November 22nd, 1963, President Kennedy, his wife Jackie, Governor Connally and his wife, and two Secret Service agents rode through the streets of Dallas, Texas, in an open-top limousine as part of a small appearance in preparation for the 1964 election. Around 12:30 p.m., as the motorcade rolled through Dealey Plaza, passing the Texas School Book Depository, shots rang out. What followed was captured on a home film camera by a spectator named Abraham Zapruder, whose amateur video is now infamous, and is really the only close-up footage we have of the event. Kennedy was shot in the neck. Governor Connally took a bullet to the back, which exited his chest and impacted his wrist and thigh. Seconds later, Kennedy was struck by a shot to the head. The motorcade sped to a nearby hospital, where the president was pronounced dead shortly after. While all that was happening, local police responded to eyewitness reports that the shots were fired from the book depository. They investigated and later found an Italian-made 6.5 Carcano Model 38 rifle, 3 spent shells, and other evidence on the 6th floor of the building, which was ultimately linked to an employee of the book depository, a Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald, a former U.S. Marine who was arrested in a theater later that day in connection with the assassination and the murder of a local police officer.
Though he denied all connections to the event and claimed that he was a patsy, Oswald was charged with the murder of a local police officer, which occurred shortly after the killing, and the actual assassination of the president. While being transferred to the Dallas County Jail, Oswald himself was shot with a revolver by a local nightclub owner, Jack Ruby, who was in the crowd surrounding the city jail's exit. Ruby was arrested and was later found guilty of murdering Oswald. He was sentenced to death, but died of lung cancer in prison in 1967.
These findings were put together by the Warren Commission, a committee which collected and reviewed evidence regarding the assassination at the behest of Lyndon Johnson, and they determined that Oswald acted alone and was the lone shooter in the assassination of JFK.
Now here's some evidence for conspiracy. Most is circumstantial, but here you go. Practical tests with firearms aficionados using rifles identical to Lee Harvey's demonstrated that the shot was difficult, the weapon jammed frequently, and the time frame was very tight for 3 shots. Discovery Channel, FBI, and NRA all conducted tests.
Zoom in on the Zapruder film and tell me that the last shot doesn't come from the front. Go on, try to do it.
We'll wait. Oswald's rifle scope was damaged or was nearly impossible to sight correctly without essential parts, which were never found with the rifle or scope, and using iron sights would have required low point of aim, plus 6th floor position would have required even lower point of aim on top of that, making shots more difficult.
The trees lining the road still had full leaves even in November, partially obscuring the view from the 6th floor.
Many bystanders reported more than 3 shots.
Jack Ruby had connections to mobsters, the Yiddish connection, look into that, and was contacted by the FBI multiple times in attempts to recruit him as an informant.
Almost perfectly intact bullet found on gurney with Governor Connally, a bullet that allegedly passed through Kennedy, the seat in front of him, Connally's body, and his wrist, and left a surface wound on his thigh.
LBJ was sworn in on the plane to Washington just 2 short hours after the assassination, but that's just standard procedure, right?
It is, though, to not have a period where there's no president.
I mean, I hear you, but it seemed a little too soon. He seemed too eager. But I don't know. Again, circumstantial.
The autopsy was wrapped up quickly and the limousine was sent back to Ohio after being examined by forensic teams. 80% of the car was rebuilt and it was put back into service. It was refurbished again in 1967. All of this at the request of LBJ.
Dun dun dun. The Warren Commission admits time and again that Secret Service, FBI, and Dallas police failed in their duties or executed them poorly. It's a series of coincidences.
One bullet was never accounted for.
The tracheotomy hole in Kennedy's neck may have ruined evidence which would have indicated whether the front side neck wound was an entry or an exit wound, and that would have determined whether or not the shot came from the front or back.
A suspicious man was reported in the grassy knoll area ahead of the motorcade. A shot from there could have explained the rearward motion of Kennedy's head in the Zapruder film, which is hard to explain based on Oswald's position behind Kennedy.
Why did Oswald wait to shoot Kennedy as he was driving away at an angle when he could have shot him half a minute earlier on the adjacent street where he would have had a clear oncoming shot?
So many things had to go right. 2 out of 3 shots above center of mass on a moving target from 75 to 100 yards in less than 8 seconds with an old, partially damaged rifle. From Oswald, whose rifleman skills were up for debate. Poor performance by local police and Secret Service protecting Kennedy and Oswald. Eyewitnesses all correctly pointing to Oswald. Jack Ruby being in the right place and right time, and successfully killing him. Near perfect recovery of forensic evidence.
So let's talk about means, motive, and opportunity. The means. The mob had access to weapons and could easily find a skilled marksman willing to do the job for the right money. And obviously the CIA, FBI, or LBJ himself would have had no trouble finding top-notch sharpshooters.
In the motive, the mob wanted John and Bobby out of the way, as they were cracking down on organized crime and foiling their operations, and we saw Bobby was taken out a few years later. LBJ would obviously become president if Kennedy died, so there's a big motive. And many individuals and agencies within the US government wanted to escalate operations in Vietnam, which JFK was hesitant to do, so removing him would ensure that foreign policy went their way.
And opportunity. Both the mob and CIA could have made time to do this. The president's visit was planned well in advance and was no secret to the public.
I'll leave you with these quotes from the 1976 House Select Committee on Assassinations, which reviewed the Warren Commission and its results. The investigation into the possibility of conspiracy in the assassination was inadequate.
The Department of Justice failed to exercise initiative in supervising and directing the investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation of the assassination.
The Central Intelligence Agency was deficient in its collection and sharing of information both prior to and subsequent to the assassination.
The FBI failed to investigate adequately the possibility of a conspiracy to assassinate the president.
The FBI was deficient in its sharing of information with other agencies and departments.
The Warren Commission failed to investigate adequately the possibility of a conspiracy to assassinate the president. This deficiency was attributable in part to the failure of the commission to receive all the relevant information that was in the possession of other agencies and departments of the government.
Now let me make a few counterpoints, so it's not an open and shut case at all.
By all means, go ahead.
Lee Harvey Oswald was a known communist who actually traveled to, some might say he even defected to, the Soviet Union, but he decided to came back when he became disillusioned with them too. He definitely had Marxist tendencies, which ran counter to JFK's strong stance against the Soviets in the Cold War. He was a complete loser with no future, and a lot of resentment, let's be honest. It is possible he acted out of personal spite or was recruited by the Soviets while he was over there. The Soviets had a lot of reasons to want JFK dead. The Cuban Missile Crisis had been resolved by JFK with some embarrassment to Khrushchev, but there were certainly a lot of people with motives to kill the president, as we mentioned above. A large number of eyewitnesses saw and heard shots from the book depository, placed Oswald at the scene, saw him carry in a large covered object that morning, which was the rifle, saw him flee the scene, and witnessed a man strikingly similar to him kill a policeman. The gun was his. The picture of him with the gun was genuine, despite his claim that it was fake, and no concrete physical evidence of any other shooters has surfaced in the decades since the event.
Thanks for listening to the Sons of Antiquity highlight reel. To hear this clip in context and to enjoy our full-length episodes, check out the links in the description or search Sons of Antiquity on YouTube, BitChute, Spotify, or Apple and Google Podcasts.